Good morning, everybody. Hello, Braden. What's going on? Appreciate you listening to yesterday's Prospects and Props podcast. We had that chart that I think one of you guys threw into the TDN Premium Discord that we were able to kind of use as the topic of or the base for what we were talking about. And it's certainly going to be a problem moving forward because so many of these services are being put behind streaming. Streaming paywalls, right? So it's obviously going to matter if the NFL wants to continue to take advantage of the gambling dollars, right? If they want to continue to have that as a revenue source for themselves, and it's certainly a lucrative one, right? I mean, all these teams are putting sports books in their stadiums, and you see all the ads, and so it's a big deal. It's a big moneymaker for both ends of the equation for the NFL and for the gambling places themselves, the BetMGMs, the FanDuels, the DraftKings. I mean, you name it, right? I mean, this is important, but they got to get it right to where people are going to be able to bet, and live in-game betting is the next frontier, right? It's easy now to throughout the week, and this is what I personally do, but to throughout the week to look at games and pick games based on the number that you like, and then write it all down, and then on Sunday root for it. But there are times where during a game, you think a certain thing's going to happen and you want to place that bet. There are people who do like doing that kind of stuff. So we'll be intrigued. I'm very intrigued to see how they go about this, but I don't think it's necessarily a next 12-month problem. I think it's over the next couple of years, and then with the new TV deal as well. Hello, Janelle. Welcome back. Appreciate it. I'm glad you had fun yesterday. It was a fun conversation to have. A little bit of a different show today. It's a free-for-all, so it's whatever topics you guys want to discuss. And we'll get started here in a second. But if you guys don't have a bunch of things that you immediately want to get to, there are things that I have kind of stowed away. We could talk about the Commanders selling for $6 billion. We can talk about, I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but the second round of Jack's mock draft was added, I believe, on Wednesday. So if we want to get into some of that, we can. We can get into, OBJ and some of the comments that he made. There's a lot of things that we can get into. We're not talking about Sean Clifford, Heldy. We are not doing it. It's not happening. And then Braden says, by the way, I would gladly take the under on Cleveland. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I have my notebook here, and I write down as we do them. I like put little arrows above and below each team to signal to me like which ones I would be interested in betting. And there aren't many. There aren't many that I am super interested in. But Cleveland's under, I think is I think at best they push. What's up, Raul? Discussing the mock would be fun. All right, well we can start with that if we'd like. I have not seen it. That probably makes me a bad friend to my good friend Jack McKessie, but I have not seen it. So this will kind of be a natural reaction here to it, and we'll get to a point here where I'll figure this out to where I can put stuff on the screen. I mean, I know how to do it. I just don't have the graphics set up for it with my camera. Oh, speaking of my camera, hello, everybody. Get everything rolling here. We're 5 minutes in. The pre-show kind of carried on a little bit. But if there are questions that you have about the mock, if there are questions that you have about the draft coming up that are unrelated to the mock, if there are things that you want to know about other teams in the National Football League, anything you want, that's what the free-for-all is about. The free-for-all is supposed to be you guys taking over the show. And I have topics that we can discuss. But we can go wherever we want to. We're inside of 2 weeks to the NFL draft, and so obviously us being the Draft Network, I'm sure that will drive the conversation. But if there's anything about football that we would like to get into, we can. So with that being said, I'll press the magical button. I'll do the intro for the podcast feed, and we can get started. And welcome into the Friday edition of the TDN Daily podcast. Chris Schubert back with you once again on the show. Hope everybody's having a great Friday, a nice close to the work week. A Friday free-for-all, the second one in a row. So the live YouTube chat taking over the show. They are driving the conversation. They are driving what topics we are going to discuss here on the show today. So we could be bouncing back and forth. We could be bouncing all over the place. So just another incentive for you to come over at some point and hang out with us on the YouTube side of things, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every single day, because the Friday show, you take over. You drive the show. You are the producer. You are the co-host. You give me the topics, and then we discuss from there. And we were discussing in the pre-show a couple of different things that could potentially kick us off here and start the show. And the popular thing, the thing that everybody kind of wanted to look at, we're not going to go through every pick, but the second round added to our good friend Jack McKessie's mock draft. The first mock he's ever done. He did it this week. The first one that he was in charge of all of the picks. So we talked about that, and if you want to listen to that, that's Monday's episode of the podcast from this week where we go through that. Jack was actually a part of the show, being in the live YouTube chat, so we had a conversation with him. He can kind of explain his thought process a little bit more in depth with some of these picks. But he added the second round to the mock draft. So we're going to go through that here as we go. But Braden wants to start us off and say, all I know about round 2 of Jack's mock is the Raiders can't have one of my guys. So this is where we're going to start. The Raiders at pick 39 take Tommy Adebawore from Northwestern, and this is a great player. This is a player that is potentially going to get some first-round buzz in a lot of different ways. And I'm going to fix my webcam here, everybody, so just give me a second to see if I can get it to kick back on. All right, hold on, everybody. We're gonna do a little hard cut here because I don't know what happened to my webcam. We're going to deactivate and activate. This is what happens when we do the show. We hadn't had a tech problem all week. So, all right, stand by, everybody. I got to unplug the camera and plug it back in. So just hold on. Everybody, hold your questions. Everybody holding on here because we're going to unplug something. It could break something. So everybody just please hope that this goes well. And in the meantime, get your comments about the mock draft in the chat. So when I come back, we've got a bunch of stuff that we can kind of go back to back to back. But hold on. I got to go under the desk to fix the computer. Wish me luck. We're okay. We're back. Hello, everybody. Had to go under the desk. I think we're okay. Please confirm. Please confirm whether or not you can see me. I can see me, which probably means you can see me. I'm surprised that worked. I did the thing they tell you to do all the time. I just unplugged it and plugged it back in. I can't believe that worked. It's the tried and true method, everybody. You just unplug it and you plug it back in. Works every single time. Never a doubt. Okay, so we can get back into the swing of things. I gotta. What was I saying? Okay. One of the first comments that we have about the mock draft itself comes from Braden and says, all I know about round 2 from Jack's mock is the Raiders can't have one of my guys. Well, who's your guy here? Let's look. So at pick number 39, they have Tommy Adebawore, edge from Northwestern. This is a player that, we did a film study on in the TDN Premium Discord a little bit ago. And Ryan and I were very impressed, right? Ryan came into it knowing a little bit more about Tommy than I did, but I came away very impressed. The versatility, can kind of play different spots along the line. And the big takeaway we had was probably getting a bad reputation for being playing in Northwestern, right? If he had a different helmet on, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, that we would probably be talking about him as a first-round player. So we'll see. He could potentially sneak in there as well. Tuttle says, love the Lions picks, #OurLions. Well, you know what that means. We've now got to scroll through and make sure we get to all the Lions picks. So here we go. So the first Lions pick we've got here, Darnell Washington, tight end from Georgia. Yeah, sign me up for this. Guy that can block on the run game. And did we not remember? We took Bijan, correct? We took Bijan in the first round, right? That's what we did in this mock. I remember writing it down that we liked it. Yeah, we took Bijan in the first round. Now we got him a great blocking tight end and a guy that can also do wonders for us in the passing game. Man, Jack, you are beefing up #OurLions very well. So that was one pick. I think they have 2 second-round picks. And then they take Jack Campbell to help their linebacker group. You got Malcolm Rodriguez already there. We're going to add that to Aiden Hutchinson. We're going to add Jack Campbell to the mix. My goodness, we're building something special here in Detroit. And then what did we do? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Let me just make sure about this. We took Jalen Carter at pick number 6. So we've got help in the interior. We've already got Aiden Hutchinson. We've got Malcolm Rodriguez. We added Jack Campbell. And then on our offense, we added Bijan Robinson and Darnell Washington. Lions fans, there should not be any complaints here. You should be totally fine with everything that has occurred here in this mock draft. Great shout, Tuttle, because you are 100% correct that is a good haul in the second round for the Lions. Heldy says Branch lasting to the Jets' second-round pick would make me die inside. Well, what did they do with both of their picks? Now, they currently have these picks because they have not figured out, we did this yesterday on the show, but they have not figured out their deal with Heldy. I mean, I understand you want to talk about Brian Branch to Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I get that, but we're not going to talk about pick 44? John Michael Schmitz, which I think technically is pick 43 because I think they're just going to skip Miami altogether. They're just not going to count them as a number. So I think these are picks 42 and 43. We got John Michael Schmitz to help the interior of the offensive line. And then we took Peter Skoronski in the first. Jack, I know he's not in the chat, but Jack, please, this is what I'm talking about. We don't need to take Peter Skoronski to help the interior. We take John Michael Schmitz and we can make him our center. We've got Elijah Vera Tucker. We've got Laken Tomlinson, who's going to supposedly bounce back. We've got Dwayne Brown to be our left tackle. Mekhi Becton and Max Mitchell for the right side of things. We're good. We could use 13 someplace else. We could use 13 on a wide receiver potentially. We don't have to go Peter Skoronski. Look what we accomplished in the second round. We got Brian Branch and John Michael Schmitz. This is a great selection here. So I like John Michael Schmitz, but I don't want him for my own team, so feel free to have him. Man, John Michael Schmitz plays with a nasty streak in the best possible way. I was very impressed with him down in Mobile. Let's look at here's the thing, because let's look at it from this perspective, right? So we've got, I'm going in reverse order because I'm scrolling up the page, but Jordan Addison to Kansas City, that's one wide receiver. We had Quentin Johnson to Baltimore, that's two wide receivers. We had Zay Flowers to Green Bay, that's three wide receivers. And we had Jackson Smith and Jigba to the Texans, four wide receivers. So we had four wide receivers in the first round of the of Jack's mock draft. Let's go through that position specifically and look at the receivers that go in the second round and see if we like some of these team fits. So we've got Josh Downs to Carolina. They're definitely going to need a wide receiver, right? They move on from DJ Moore. They do so in order to move up to number one to get their quarterback. And so they're probably going to want to help surround their franchise quarterback. And for Jack, it was C.J. Stroud. I think it's more than likely going to be Bryce Young. But you're still going to want to get that quarterback, whoever it ends up being, and even could be Anthony Richardson, could even be Will Levis. I mean, I think all four options are, we shouldn't rule them out completely. You're going to want to get a wide receiver for that quarterback. The Saints taking Cedric Tillman at 41. Tillman's a good player. You worry about kind of the scheme part of it, but I think him going to New Orleans is great because he's not going to be asked to be a wide receiver one. They've already got that in Chris Olave. Michael Thomas is still there, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Michael Thomas still there, restructured his contract to stay there. So again, I don't know how much we can ask from Michael Thomas, but we have him in the mix. And if we add Cedric Tillman, yeah, we've got a pretty good group here of players that we like. So we'll see. We'll see ultimately what plays out in New Orleans, but I don't hate that pick. I don't hate that pick at one bit. We keep scrolling. The chat's kind of moving ahead of me here, which is kind of throwing me off. But Jalen Hyatt to Atlanta. I mean, the same questions you have about Cedric Tillman, you're going to have about Jalen Hyatt. I think this would be fun. You got Drake London. You've got Kyle Pitts. Again, you're not asking Jalen Hyatt to come in and be an immediate wide receiver. You're not asking him to be a wide receiver one, and you're not really truly asking him to be a wide receiver two, because that's the role that Kyle Pitts basically plays. So you're asking him to come in and be a wide receiver three. I think that's the best case scenario to allow him to develop and not ask him to take on a huge workload. We continue to scroll through this second round to see any other wide receivers. Marvin Mims Jr. I hate this. We can't allow this to happen one bit. Yeah, no, Braden. Braden says, yeah, Mims in Buffalo is good, unfortunately. No. Just like we can't have Jordan Addison to Kansas City, Braden, we cannot allow Marvin Mims Jr. to the Buffalo Bills. No, we can't add more offensive firepower and more offensive weaponry to the Buffalo Bills. Can't happen. I will not allow it on my watch as a Jets fan. I can't have it occur. And that's it for wide receivers that go inside the top 64 picks, 63 picks in the second round. Janelle says Packers won't take Flowers. He doesn't fit their size requirement. So I did a Browns podcast last night, and the host of the show asked me if I knew the specifics about the Browns draft guardrails, and I didn't. And he shared them with me, that they certain age, certain height, certain boxes that they try to fit players in. And I was talking with him, and I said, man, I would hate that. I would hate this idea that, like, there's a player that I really like coming out, but I know my team's never going to take him because he doesn't fit one of these guardrails. And so, like, Janelle here saying, like, the Packers aren't going to take Zay Flowers because he doesn't fit their size requirements. I know Zay Flowers is, on the smaller side as a wide receiver, but, like, man, I don't know what you do with that. Like, I love Tank Dell, right? And I know Tank Dell's going to be off teams' boards completely because of the size issues, but I would want to get Tank Dell in my building. Maybe not in the first round, maybe not in the second round, maybe in the third round, probably at the top of, day 3, but I would want to get Tank Dell in my building because I think he's explosive and he's got some game-changing speed that could help me. Philip says, I like Downs to Carolina. We need big help at the slots. Shai Smith ain't it. Yeah, I think Downs would help in that regard a lot. Janelle says Packers wide receivers need to be over 6 foot and 195 pounds. Well, all right. If that's the way, if they're going to stick to that book, then yes, Zay Flowers is not going to be the selection for them with pick 15 in the first round. Michael says, obviously Jack didn't have this context, but thoughts on Johnston to Baltimore now that OBJ's in town. Still swinging on wide receiver in round 1, or should they focus on corner or BPA? Bijan, LOL now. Well, here's what we don't, Michael. We have a saying around these parts, hashtag draft good players, right? It's what we believe in. Just draft good players. Doesn't matter what position you just draft good players. And Baltimore has been kind of the king of the draft good players mantra, because good players fall to them on the board and they just pick them and everybody goes, oh gosh, we let that player fall because we let positional value get in the way, or we let some other metric get in the way, and now that good player is on the Baltimore Ravens. But to the specifics, the specific nature of your question here, right? Do you feel like just adding Odell Beckham Jr. fixes the Baltimore Ravens wide receiver problem? Do you think that immediately overhauls the offense for them and the idea that Lamar Jackson doesn't have weapons on offense? And I know they still have Mark Andrews, but it's just adding OBJ, who is coming off of an injury, right? Coming off of an ACL tear, hasn't played in a long time. Can you really say that fixes everything? No, I don't think so. So I think Baltimore should still swing on a wide receiver. Maybe you don't want to do it in round 1. Maybe you want to do it later on. What's their full draft pick allocation look like, right? What kind of other picks do we have here? I'm going to look it up because I don't know specifically what they have. I think by the time we get to the draft, I'll have a pretty good idea where these teams are picking. But Baltimore's got 22. They don't pick again until 86. They don't pick again until the third round. So what kind of receivers are going to be there at 86 if you pass on 1 to 22? That's the question you have to have. Now, maybe you drop down. Maybe you drop out of your spot. Maybe you let a team come up. You drop down. You're able to pick up an additional pick that allows you to kind of maneuver around and then be able to trade up for a wide receiver. Or you trade down, you get more value. But I wouldn't necessarily say no, that they shouldn't take another wide receiver. I think Baltimore's going to continue to do what we see them do all year, and they're just going to focus on taking a good player. And if it's the best player available on their board, then that's probably what they will end up doing. I want to get to Braden's question here because it allows me to talk about my favorite tight end prospect. Which tight end pick do you like more in round 2? Sam Laporta to the Dolphins or Luke Musgrave to the Packers? Luke Musgrave. Size, speed, just the way he moves, the athleticism. Luke Musgrave's my tight end 1 in this class, and so to get that guy at 46, to add a huge pass-catching threat for Jordan Love in year 1, I mean, we talk about it all the time, and maybe it's a little different than it was maybe a decade or so ago, but younger quarterbacks, we specifically talk about it with rookie quarterbacks, but I think with younger quarterbacks, their safety blanket is their tight end and their running backs out of the backfield, right? Those check down kind of options. Well, Luke Musgrave's more than a check down option. He can be a huge benefit to Jordan Love in his first year as the starter there in Green Bay, if that's ultimately what it comes to. So that's the pick that I would say that I really like a ton. I think Luke Musgrave, not to say that Sam Laporta to the Dolphins is a bad pick. I think that's a great pick for the Dolphins and what they want to do offensively as well. But I just love Luke Musgrave a lot. Michael says we let the Seahawks add LVN and Brzee to that defense. Sheesh. What did they do here? Let's look here. Let's look what they did with their selections here, because I don't remember it specifically. So we added Anthony Richardson at 5. Okay, so that's what we did with our first pick. And then we doubled back here with our second first-round pick, and we took Lucas Van Ness. Okay, so we've added an edge player, we've added a quarterback, and then we came back around here in the second round, and we took Brian Brzee. Yeah, this is probably something that we probably shouldn't be allowed to do. And then we added Joe Tippmann. Michael, we added Joe Tippmann at 53. We added a great interior offensive player to help Geno Smith and Anthony Richardson. Well, we've had a great 2 rounds here in Seattle with this draft class. Are you kidding me? This is a great haul for Seattle. Holy smokes. Dell should make a roster and get special teams consideration with draft capital to agree 100%. Fantasy Football Garage. Tank Dell is a player that I think is going to be able to immediately provide you special teams return ability, whether it's on punts or kickoffs, but I think is a good enough receiver with good enough explosiveness that you are going to be able to find a role for him. I know the size is a problem, right? You're betting on an outlier with that size, but I think of where Tutu Atwell went. Tutu Atwell was a smaller receiver. He went pretty high. I think Tank Dell is a better player than Tutu Atwell, so I think there's an interesting opportunity there and a good case study for what Tank Dell, what happens with Tank Dell. Thoughts on Tank Bigsby going to Denver potentially? I think with the running back group at large, it's beauty in the eye of the beholder. After Bijan Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs, it is whatever you need at your running back position, there's a guy for you. And if Tank Bigsby is your guy for Denver, then so be it. I think depending on what role you need filled from your running back, you need a bell cow, a backup to the bell cow. You need a change of pace back. You need a guy that specializes in blocking. You need a guy that specializes in being able to catch the ball out of the backfield. I think you're going to be able to check all of those boxes. Campbell fits a McDermott, Mike linebacker so much better. You asked who the Bills' first-round pick was, and I believe it was Drew Sanders, if I remember the board correctly. Yeah, it was Drew Sanders. I really like the Seattle trench picks as well. Yeah, Tuttle. I mean, I think they did a great job here. I think they did a great job here in this draft. So shout out to Jack, an excellent job here. Seattle's winning the West with that. I think they're winning the West. I think I'd pick them right now to win the West. I'm a little skeptical of San Francisco. I gotta see what they're doing with this quarterback situation. Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? I think it's going to be Trey to start the year, but then you got Brock coming back, and like that's a concern to me. I still think overall the rest of that team is great, but when you have question marks about your quarterback, and there are question marks in Seattle too. I think it's 50-50, but I think I would lean Seattle right now. But Braden, I reserve the right to change my mind when we do the win totals and I see the schedule, right? Because that's going to dictate a lot of this for me. Yeah, Michael, it's an incredible haul. Braden says if I had to pick one player to go earlier than what Jack possibly had, it would be Mozzie Smith. So let's see where Mozzie goes, and let's see if there are any other players that we think could go earlier than that. He had Mozzie Smith go 54. I can agree with that. I think Joe Tippmann goes earlier than 53. I'm just kind of scrolling up. I think Darnell Washington could go earlier than 49. John Michael Schmitz will probably go earlier than 44. Matthew Bergeron at 42 to the Titans I kind of like a lot, but that feels like a decent range for him. I'm not the hugest fan of Gervon Dexter, so I'm iffy on that pick. Where does Gervon go? Got to scroll through this class and see. He goes to the Philadelphia Eagles at 63. Should have known that it was an Eagles pick because Heldy brought it up. Should have known. My fault. My bad. That's on me, folks. Fantasy Football Garage says Tutu went in the early second round and Dell was much more productive in college. I'm Houston-based, a little bit of a UH homer. Well, Fantasy Football Garage, allow me, who doesn't have the bias, right, who isn't a homer. I mean, I'm a homer to the mid-majors, so if that's a thing, we can say that. But 100% correct that Dell was much more productive. And you have Tutu Atwell that goes in the early second round. Now, I will say the thing that's going to hurt Tank Dell is we've got a pretty good wide receiver class at the top, right? We've got a pretty good group of names that are going to be able to fit what teams are looking for. And so, depending on how many go in the first round, if maybe 2 or 3 go in the first round, that's going to move a bunch of guys into the second round, and then that could push Tank further down the board a little bit, right? But if there's a big run and then teams look at Tank Dell and they go, man, we would love to get this guy in our building, then he might go a little bit earlier than we thought. So that could be a possibility. Philip says, I'm surprised O'Cyrus Torrance made it to the back half of the second round. We can't be letting Dallas get steals at the O-line pick. So he gets to 59. Let's see who else goes on the interior or just on offensive line in general. Luke Weipler goes just in front of O'Cyrus to the Giants. By the way, everybody, if you want to talk about anything other than the second round of this mock, we can, right? You want to throw anything else in there, please go ahead. This was kind of just our launching off point, but we're almost 30 minutes in to the show today. So appreciate everybody hanging out here with us. Jalen Duncan goes 57 at the tackle spot. Joe Tippmann, 53. We already kind of mentioned it. Anton Harrison goes 48 to Washington. John Michael Schmitz, who was already mentioned. Matthew Bergeron to Tennessee, who was already mentioned. And that's it for. Oh no, DeJuan Jones goes 34 to Houston. Man, I love that pick for for Houston and DeJuan Jones. We get a pretty good player to pair with Laramie Tunsil to be our bookends at the tackle spot. Love that a lot for Houston. And again, setting yourself up to have the infrastructure in place to be able to take a quarterback down the road. Because Jack, he bought it. He's on the side of, I think, what is the correct approach here. He took Will Anderson at number 2. Great. We've checked one of those cornerstone boxes. We've got our edge player. At pick 12, what do? We take a wide receiver. What is slowly over time becoming one of those linchpin positions that you got to build your team around. We get Jackson Smith and Jigba, who we hope to be our wide receiver 1. So, okay, we've checked edge. We've checked wide receiver. We then follow that up with taking DeJuan Jones. We get another tackle. So we've got Laramie Tunsil, we've got DeJuan Jones. So now we've built that. And we took Kenyon Green a year ago. We're not going to give up on a player that we took just a year ago. So we got him on the inside. We've got a good running back in the backfield in Dameon Pierce. We've added a wide receiver. We took Derek Stingley Jr., so we've got him. Jalen Petrie was good for us last year. So we've got... We're trending in the right direction here with Houston. And oh, by the way, we have 2 first-round picks next year. So you could stay at 2 if you want. You could also trade 2 if you want. I would trade out of the spot and get more picks and still get a decent enough edge rusher. Maybe not Will Anderson, but trade down a couple of spots and get get a different edge rusher. But if you want to stay and pick Will Anderson, I mean, we just went through all of those linchpin positions that they've done a great job filling out. Fantasy Football Garage, I'm hopeful 10 to 12 wide receivers going around 1-2. It's a trend happening in the NFL draft. I saw a chart on Twitter. There have been more wide receivers taken over the last 5 years. Could be perfect for Dallin Lake too. It could. He says also Rashee Rice is a first rounder. Man, Braden, you want to tell him? You want to tell him about what we feel about Rashee Rice? That we were big fans of Rashee Rice. Didn't have a great Senior Bowl, and there's just been kind of zero talk about him. Being one of those first names taken, and that concerns me a little bit when there's like zero buzz on a player. Tuttle says Keon White is someone whose draft range seems quite wide from late first to late second. Yeah, it's again what you think of Keon, right? And I think because there's such a vast, you can see it in draft Twitter, right? You can see the vast disagreements in the evaluation of Keon White. That's what makes the range so wide. Michael says, for a non-mock question, okay, we'll get one of these in here. Do you think Tannehill is a Titan in 23, or do they make the play for a quarterback and find a Tannehill taker? You're asking me to project a little bit. I think it's more likely than not that Tannehill is a Titan in 2023 because there's nothing that I have that's tangible to tell me otherwise, right? I sit here and I go, I'm not really sure what team kind of lines up for him. So I'm not... I think he'll be a Titan in 2023. Do they make the play for a quarterback? They could. They could call up Arizona. That's exactly what they did in the mock for Jack, and they called up Arizona, GM that they have an existing relationship with because he just worked for them a year ago, and they can very quickly put a deal together and move up to number 3. Now, in this scenario, it was to take Bryce Young because Bryce Young's on the board. I don't think Bryce is going to be on the board. I think if I was doing a predictive mock right now, Bryce would be the pick at number 1, Will Anderson would be the pick at number 2. That's what I would do 1-2, and then I would go from there. And then we would see what team I think maybe would want to make a trade to take a quarterback at number 3 if possible. So to answer your question, Michael, and to not kind of be wishy-washy on it, I think Tannehill's a Titan in 2023, and I don't think they make the play for a quarterback. But they could. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying no from a case of I don't think it's possible. I think it is possible. But if you're just asking me to predict right now, I would say no. Less than 2 weeks out, but things can change. We've got less than 2 weeks. Fantasy Football Garage says Texans have the capital to take almost any player. We'll see who they want. It's a beautiful place to be. It's not a beautiful place to be in terms of your record and your competitiveness, but it is a beautiful place to be when you can just sit back, let the board come to you, and say, this is the best player on our board. This is the player we're going to take. Because more likely than not, we don't have a better player at that position on the roster, and so we can make our team better. That's the approach that the Texans should be taking. Now, again, if they love a quarterback, if they've got their guy, if they know who they want, then go ahead. Take that player. It's okay. If they love Will Levis, if they love C.J. Stroud, right? Whoever they love, if that person's there at 2, then do it, right? Don't stop yourself from doing it. Braden says, if you were the schedule maker, who would you have Kansas City open with at home in week 1? Philly, Cincy, Buffalo, maybe Miami. Braden, we have not done the Chiefs yet. Are those all their home games? I know when we do and by the way, cheap plug for the Prospects and Props podcast, myself and Jamie Eisner each and every day. News on the NFL draft, gambling news right now. We're focusing on team win totals and NFL draft props, but we'll talk about everything from a gambling perspective. As you know, during the season, we'll have those conversations. So we've been doing the win totals, and Kansas City's come up a ton. But that doesn't mean I remember where they play. Just because we've talked about them doesn't mean I remember exactly every team they play and whether it's on the home or road. So I'm pulling up the schedule here just to see what their home games are for 2023. So their home games for 2023, they have Denver, the Chargers, the Raiders. I wouldn't have it be any of those. Buffalo at home would be interesting. You mentioned Miami. That would be one that I would say is interesting. Cincinnati is interesting. Philly is interesting. We know they love to go with a big marquee game in week 1 on Thursday night, right? They love doing that. They love going with a big-time matchup, and they tend to lean towards potentially Super Bowl rematches if the opportunity presents itself. They love to go with conference championship rematches if they can, or they love to go with 2 big powerhouses if they can. So the interesting thing here for the Chiefs is they could very easily draw the idea of being the Thursday night game, and either of the games against Cincinnati, which would be an AFC title rematch, against Philadelphia, which would be a Super Bowl rematch, or against Buffalo, Mahomes versus Allen, could be the Thursday night game. To me, you got a Super Bowl rematch on the schedule. I think you lead with that. And so to me, that would be the game that I would put in Thursday night. But we'll see. They pay people a lot of money to sit in a room and come up with the schedule and do the algorithm to make it all work. So we'll see what they ultimately do. But to me, that I would power rank it as Super Bowl rematch, my top option, Mahomes Allen, my second best option, and then AFC title rematch, third option. That would be how I would rank it from a week 1 perspective. And again, I think any one of those games, and even if it's not Thursday night, I think Kansas City is going to draw a national assignment in week 1 with that amount of games at the schedule maker's disposal to put in the week 1 slot, right? Whether it's Thursday night, whether it's Sunday night, or whether it's Monday night, I certainly think they're going to draw one of those spots. But we'll see. When does the schedule get released? What's up, Sam? Good morning to you. Hope everyone is having a great start to their Friday. When does the schedule get released? NFL schedule release. Let's see if we can get a date on this, because I'm sure it'll be a topic of conversation. People say likely expected to be released on Thursday, May 11th. Excuse me? Less than a month from now? Less than a month from now, we're going to get the schedule. Well, we might do a live reaction shot of that right here on the podcast here on the YouTube side of things. Michael, this will be the last question for the Friday Free for All podcast edition. We'll continue the show in the post-show shenanigans. Michael says, if you're trading for a running back, are you going after Henry or Eckler? I'm assuming you mean Derrick Henry or Austin Eckler. 2 different players, right? 2 vastly different players. Derrick Henry, that bell cow. That guy that's just going to just run people over, that can break big runs, but is more of a traditional run-first back. Austin Eckler, a guy that can run the football, but also gives you a dynamic out of the passing game. So it would very much depend, very, very, very much depend on what my team is looking for from an offensive perspective. I know my team, the New York Jets, like to have their running backs to be able to be threats out of the passing game, so it would be Austin Eckler. But from a pure talent perspective, Derrick Henry's the better runner. It just depends on what you need. The league is trending more towards wanting backs that can be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, so I think Eckler would be the option. So this is fun. Sam says, I think I would like Henry for the Jets more. I would disagree. I would take Austin Eckler. I would have Brees and Austin Eckler just out there just causing chaos. But again, that's the fun part. I think you could make the debate on either side. Again, you're not saying that Austin Eckler's better than Derrick Henry, but I think you're making the case that Austin Eckler fits what you want, what your team wants out of a running back better than Derrick Henry does. That's going to do it for us this week here on the podcast. I appreciate everybody making this show a part of your day. We had a very fun week, both in the podcast feed and on the YouTube side of things. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast. Tell a friend to tell a friend about the show. We greatly appreciate it. If you would like to, we would greatly appreciate it if you come and hang out with us on the YouTube side of things, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We get the video version of the show, and you get to hang out in the live chat with the community that we are building over here on the YouTube. So we would appreciate it if you would stop by over there as well. So that's going to do it for us this week. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Talk to you all on Monday. Sam says, what about Michael Carter in the what I can only refer to as the SpongeBob meme font? Michael Carter didn't have a good year last year. Michael Carter did not have a good year this year. I just think the smaller receiving backs are a little easier to find than someone like Henry. That's fair. I mean, that's a fair comment. I don't have an answer for that. I don't have a counter to that. You're correct in that regard. It's harder to find a Derrick Henry than it is to find a receiving back, just because everybody nowadays seems to do it. But to me, then that means the price is higher on Henry. And am I going to give up really high-end, top-end draft capital for Derrick Henry when I can? Oh, hell, dude, don't you start with me with Bilal Powell. Signed a one-day contract a few years ago to be able to retire as a Jet. It's my guy. The Sean Green, Bilal Powell. Now, Braden, I'm not going to allow you to do the SpongeBob font to Ty Johnson. Ty Johnson was good last year. Just doesn't play. Doesn't draw into the rotation. But Ty can play. But Sean Green, Bilal Powell, and they had some guys. Well, Sean, I'm sorry that's the one time Michael Carter looked good, because he was not particularly good, especially after Brees went down and they basically turned to their fourth-round pick from a year ago, who was so good in his rookie season, and said, hey, this is your team now. And he just didn't look very good. Now, the line wasn't great. My brother bought a Sean Green jersey once. Kind of wish I had a Sean Green jersey right now, to be honest. We didn't get to talk about the Commanders selling or any of the other stuff. We just that's fine. You guys drive the show, and I was happy to do it. It was fun. We had fun banter and fun conversation. We could talk about any of the other stuff. Thomas Jones was the guy. It's another good one. Janelle asks, for the draft, what are your feelings on Sean Tucker, Syracuse running back? Man, I liked Sean going into the year. I still like Sean a lot. I just don't know if I would spend a top 64 pick on him. I think he slides in as a round 3 guy for me at the position. I think there are a bunch of guys that I would take over him. I would take Tajay Spears over him. I would take Zach Charbonnet over him. Is there anybody else that I would take over Sean Tucker? I'm trying to think. Is there a name that I'm really, really missing that are like brand guys for me? I would take Tajay Spears. I would take Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. I just think we assume that they're going to go very early, but you want to throw them in there as well. There's nobody else that immediately jumps to mind, but I might be forgetting somebody that the chat will remind me of. Thoughts on Clark Phillips? Braden, I don't. Jacob, I see your question. Braden says Kendre Miller over him. That's tough. I don't know if I would do that. I think I would take Sean Tucker over Kendre. Everyone here knows I love Kendre Miller, but I think I would still take Sean Tucker over him. Thoughts on Clark Phillips? I really like Clark Phillips. I think Clark is going to hear his name called top 45, top 50. Sam brings up another great name, DJ Turner. Those two guys, I think, are going to hear their names called on day 2 pretty early. They are going to be the. If teams need multiple positions and they choose to not go corner in the first, they're going to be the consolation prize in the second that you should feel really, really good about. Clark Phillips and DJ Turner. Like, you should feel really good about getting those guys in the second if your team decides to not go for the Christian Gonzalez, Devon Witherspoon, potentially Julius Brents. What are some other names that we're talking about in the first round in terms of corner? Let's look at Jack's mock draft to see who else he has going in the first round. DJ could go round 1. You're 100% right, Heldy. He could go round 1. Yeah, he could very easily go round 1. There are teams that'll probably have him higher than some of the corners that are in the consensus to go. But we got Christian Gonzalez, We've got Devon Witherspoon. Let's see who else. Joey Porter Jr. You've got Julius Brents, Cam Smith. Those are the guys that go in the first round. If your team doesn't get one of those guys, this would be a good consolation prize. Would you take those two over Emmanuel Forbes? I would take Clark Phillips over Emmanuel Forbes. Yes. And I think I would take DJ Turner over Emmanuel Forbes. Not to say I don't like Forbes, but I think I would take Clark and DJ over him. Cam Smith, another great round 2. I mean, Jacob, he could be round 1. Could JPJ drop out of round 1? 100%, Braden. After Christian Gonzalez and Witherspoon, I don't know if there's going to be this vastly different. After Witherspoon and Gonzalez go, I think you're going to see teams that have different corners ranked after those guys, right? I think there isn't that much that's going to separate all of these guys after that, which means teams are going to value them differently. There are going to be teams that have Julius Brents higher than Joey Porter Jr. There are going to be teams that have Cam Smith higher than Joey Porter Jr. There are going to be teams that have DJ Turner or Clark Phillips or any of these guys higher than Joey Porter Jr. And I think when you have that entire group clumped together, you're going to see a bunch of different teams go in different directions. And so if those teams pass on Joey Porter Jr., yeah, he could slide. I mean, he could slide way down the board. I will make this the last call for any questions here before I sneak out of here to get a drink ahead of the TDN staff meeting today. I got another interesting DB question. Is Jamie Robinson too small? I don't think he's too small. It just depends on where you're drafting him, right? The safety group at large is weird to me. You've got Brian Branch and you've got Antonio Johnson, and those are the only two guys I feel really comfortable with taking. Is there a defensive player you feel is getting the Jordan Addison treatment, sliding for no reason? We will make this the final question because I think it's a great one from Michael. I'm going to scroll through the mock draft here just to see if there's a name that immediately jumps off the page to me. Is there a defensive player, you feel is getting the Jordan Addison treatment, sliding for no reason? Do I feel like there is a player that is sliding for no reason? Defensive player that is sliding for no reason. I'm just thinking, Michael. I'm scrolling through names. It's not for no reason, but I think Brian Brzez's a first round player, and I think he's just gonna slide. I just think he is. No, Jacob. If you're saying Kalijah Kancey is sliding for no reason, I don't think that's true. There are legitimate size concerns with Kalijah Kancey. That is there is a reason for the slide because there are people that think that the size is a concern. Janelle says, first move I would like the new owner of the Washington Commanders to make is rename them back to the football team. I can go sign that, Janelle. I can go sign that. Okay, everybody. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us all week long. I know there were a bunch of you that have been here every single day. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate it. It is so much fun being able to hang out with everybody here on a daily basis and make this show that's near and dear to my heart because it's my thing. It's the thing that I do every day. Fun, right? And you guys make it so entertaining and so interactive and so fun. And so I just want to close out the week by saying thanks. I know I say it every day, but I really just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here every single day. It is so much fun being able to banter with you guys and have this conversation and have you guys be part of the show and help this conversation out a ton. So I hope everybody has a great weekend. We've got another mock draft that'll be coming out over at the Draft Network on Monday, so that'll be the topic of conversation for us here on the Monday edition of the show. But I hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will talk to everybody on Monday.